Homer led the league in tackles with 85. The deep ball for Darius Prince, and Philadelphia's on the board first.
On the draw, this is Bryce and Aline. And Aline weaving his way all the way down to the 22.
10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, Dancy, all around. Throw as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver. You're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder, but watch. Those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
All right, we're back for another episode of Spring Football Reports after a very interesting day of football. I am joined by Bryce Legao from Lego, right?
Lego, yes.
Lego. Sorry about that. I have always pronounced it Legao, and then I heard you say it the other night on Spring or Summer Showcase, and then I was like, oh, okay, I should keep that note, and apparently still forgot it. So I apologize about that. But from Pylon Productions, so make sure you check him out on Instagram, Twitter, and then also YouTube as well, at Pylon Prods at all three of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to get into the games from today, the 2 1-point victories that we saw today, which were very interesting. A couple other topics to talk about. We're going to discuss some potential end of the year awards candidates. We're going to discuss the next week's games and then also tomorrow's games. So we'll talk about tomorrow's 2 games coming up and then Saturday's games for next week. We'll give you some predictions for those ones as well. So if you're one of those fans out there watching for sports betting info, we will get you covered here in the end of the segment. So stick with us. But anyway, Bryce, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, man. I enjoying watching some pretty good football and hanging with the family. So
there you go. When do you have to go back to college?
I head back on the 3rd, and then summer workouts and summer classes started on the 4th. So we get started fast.
I was gonna say I knew it was coming up. I couldn't remember when exactly you said.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and get into this day of football. I mean, obviously, like I said, we saw 2 1-point victories, very unlikely victories in both cases, actually. So we're going to start with the Michigan Panthers game, Birmingham Stallions game, obviously. Despite the fact that this one was in Birmingham, per Mike Mitchell, there was only, 8,000 fans at the stadium today. Abysmal numbers. We've harped on the attendance multiple times this season because of the fact that we're talking about a 2-time champion on their way to a potential 3rd championship run, and they continue to get just not impressive numbers. When you saw that 8,000 number,
it's very poor for a team who's been there for 3 seasons already. Has had a lot of success, 2 championships. You can't get at least 10,000 in the stadium on average. Like, come on, man.
Absolutely. Kind of crazy. I mean, literally in 3 seasons, this team's lost 4 total games. So how are you not supporting this game? I keep hearing excuses. Birmingham's burnt, yada, yada, yada. Well, again, it's season 3. At what point do you stop putting the past in the past, or start putting the past in the past and start supporting the teams that you have while they're there? I've said it before on the show. I'll say it again now that I have the opportunity. I mean, support these teams before they go away, and then you're missing those teams.
Exactly.
I mean,
and I've seen a lot of excuses online about events happening at the same time. Is it like, I don't care if your grandma's bake sale is on the same time as the game. That shouldn't be an excuse for those 8,000 people in the stadium.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you put it like that. I'm not sure if you've seen the Markcast has been pointing that out quite a bit. There's always an excuse. Oh, it's too hot that day. It's too cold that day.
Yeah.
There was a garage sale down the street. It was really interesting. stuff like that. It's crazy to see how many excuses people have, like at the end of the day, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm not sitting here and saying I'm innocent. I have missed some Spartans games, and I know they need the support right now. So again, I'm kind of being a little bit of a hypocrite here, but this is also season 3. That team's sticking around for the long run if you give it your support. So kind of crazy that we still haven't quite seen that level of support that they need. But let's go ahead and get into the football side of the game, which to me was very surprising. I mean, through the first half, the Stallions found themselves down 16-6 at one point, when we went into half, and it seemed like Michigan kind of had them on the ropes. In my personal impression, I actually had predicted a loss in this game because I didn't think the Stallions were really playing for much. There wasn't really a substantial change either way if they won or lost this game. So I actually didn't even expect Adrian Martinez to start. There was a tweet from Jamar Smith that was put out that said, stay ready to compete. And I read into that a little bit, thinking that he might actually get to play. And
I was surprised by that too. I mean, it's week 10. You wrapped up the conference. You got the first seed. What are you doing putting your star player out there?
Yeah, exactly. And that was my thought. Like, I thought Jamar Smith was going to be the guy, or, maybe we saw Matt Corral, just kind of give him one last hurrah, give a half to each guy or something like that. But ultimately, we didn't see that. We saw essentially the same exact depth chart we've seen all season. To my knowledge, it wasn't anything abnormal. It seemed like the rotations on defensive line, wide receiver were all pretty similar to what they've been doing all season long.
And unless I'm unaware of a rule change that happened mid-season, I'm a little confused why they kept all 3 of those quarterbacks on the roster, didn't trade somebody. Is there a trade deadline at some point?
I don't know that there's a trade deadline, but they are allowed to technically have a third quarterback dressed. I think he's like an emergency quarterback type thing, but
I
I
fully
would have to
understand.
look
But
into the rule again.
those are 3 high-value quarterbacks you could get some pretty good players for. So I don't know. That's just, if I was the GM, I probably would have traded either Jamar or Matt Corral, but I'm not. So
That's fair. That's fair. Although you got to keep in mind, in years past, the Stallions have had to use all 3 quarterbacks. Just last season they had to have Jalen Morton play, not substantial amount, but he did end up having to play. So, keeping that guy Jamar Smith on the bench, that's an inherent advantage if you ever had to go to it, which luckily they didn't this season. But that's technically abnormal for them because I think they've played 3 quarterbacks every season. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I believe they have to.
Were you, given the way that the game looked at half, were you surprised to see, first of all, Adrian Martinez come back out after half? And then were you also surprised to ultimately see the Stallions pull away with the victory there at the end?
I'm not surprised the Stallions won the game because they're a very good team. I'm also not surprised that they started off so slow because, I mean, 1, they're not playing for much. And 2, the Panthers defense is a very good unit. And they did a good job at hemming Adrian Martinez in. And one of the knocks of him is that his passing, it's good, but it's not necessarily elite yet. And if you're able to hem him in on the run game and force him to throw the ball, you're going to get opportunities.
You are not wrong. He's definitely very much still a work in progress when it comes to his accuracy. And the Panthers did, as they usually do, pressure the quarterback quite well. They had 5 sacks on the day. They were in his face all day long. Ultimately had a couple pass breakups due to the pressure as well. So, interesting to see that ultimately the Stallions find a way to win. Like I said, I actually predicted a loss in this game. I didn't expect them to pull it out, but there at the end, it looks like special teams, played a huge factor in this game. And you pointed it out, before we came on camera, that in both games we had substantial misses by the kickers that ultimately paid the price for their team. We look at San Antonio and Michigan, and they both had misses. Were you surprised to see Jake Bates ultimately fail when it mattered the most there?
No. And it's not because of his talent at all, because he's a good kicker and he has a chance to be a very good kicker at the NFL level. but he's also a very new kicker. He was a kickoff specialist at Arkansas, and this is his first season, I believe, since high school kicking fully. And I'm not surprised that, hey, we saw these flashes of talent early in the season, and we still see those, but I'm not surprised we see a few misses here and there as well.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, honestly, he hasn't been the most accurate kicker all season long, but he definitely has a leg. I just assumed 53 yards. For some odd reason, whatever reason, he seems to have better success from far away. Not today, unfortunately for him.
Also, they kind of crowned him like the prodigal son after he hit that kick against St. Louis. And then, I don't know, it can mess with a guy who's that young mentally a little bit and put extra pressure on him whenever he gets posted on ESPN, 100,000 likes, that kind of thing. But, yeah.
That's actually a great point that I didn't really think about. Confidence is very key when it comes to the kicking game, and that could be something that's kind of weighing in at certain times here, especially when the game is on the line. If I hit this, I'm going to be on SportsCenter tomorrow. If I don't, I'm going to be on SportsCenter tomorrow, so that's the pressure. So for sure, especially considering, like you said, he's very young. He hasn't been necessarily in that position a whole lot in his past. He's been, like you said, a kickoff specialist. So, he's missed kicks in the past, but I think this one kind of stings. And I mean, it stings badly because it ultimately ends up in a loss. But, luckily for Michigan, they have a chance to enact their revenge next week in the playoffs, which kind of interesting to see how that all shook out. And they're going to play each other in the playoffs. We had an interesting debate in our group chat on Facebook about the attendance and how it was affected by the fact that they could go and see this exact same game the following week. How much of an effect do you think that had on the attendance? Let's put it that way.
I think if the people who were going to go to the game are going to go to the game, honestly, I think that the attendance, it might see a bit of a jump, obviously, because it's a playoff game, but I think the attendance is going to be what it's going to be at these kind of games.
That's fair. I mean, for sure. I mean, it's definitely a thing where, it's just another excuse, like we were talking about earlier. It's just another reason why you don't want to go. Although, to be completely fair, if it were me, I would not have paid for this game. I would have opted to probably go to the next game. If I was paying for either game, that's how I would go about it. If I had season tickets, obviously probably attending all the games that I'm given.
Yes.
It just depends on how it goes. I'm not a season ticket purchaser typically, and I'm finding out how bad of a choice that is when it comes to alternative football, because you really do get a great value.
You do.
So let's move on to the St. Louis San Antonio game and kind of discuss that one. This one was another 1-point loss for San Antonio this time. St. Louis took home the victory, which again kind of messed up my predictions for this week, I believe. I predicted San Antonio in this one. What did you think going into this game? Who did you think was going to win it?
I thought San Antonio was going to get the dub. And that's mainly because Aiden McCarron had been out for a couple weeks and he was just getting back. And I wasn't sure. Obviously, he's a veteran quarterback. He's going to be fine. But I wasn't sure just how good he would be after a couple weeks off. And I liked the direction this Brahmas team was going. But that all kind of stalled whenever Chase Garbers got hurt. And Quentin Dormady came in. But to be honest, Quentin Dormady didn't even play that bad. So I think this is just a case of the Battlehawks getting a favorable outcome from a missed kick. So,
I mean, obviously, if it weren't for that kick, they'd probably lose this game. So definitely, two misses actually in this game. So I mean, man, crazy to see how bad the kicking was this weekend after
the league has been very good. Yeah,
I was going to say, most of the year we've been talking about how good it's been, and now this past weekend, it just seems like it fell apart there at the end. John Trey Kirkland, went off like he typically does, 7 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. I was kind of surprised that Jacob Sailors and Wayne Gallman had as much success as they did on this day. I kind of like the Brahmas defense. I thought they're capable when it comes to the run game, but they didn't seem to do too well. They did well in the passing game, though. However, I mean, being able to hold Hakeem Butler to only 2 catches for 34 yards. Ja'Cour Pearson, same thing, 3 receptions, 36 yards. Shout out to this secondary. They did a great job today, although ultimately it does not come up with a victory. We talked about it off camera. You said today was kind of a defensive battle, so this was the day for all the fans of the defense. I mean, does it surprise you at all to see AJ McCarron struggle this much today against Brahma's secondary?
No, because the secondary is good. The secondary is very good. It's a good secondary against a guy coming back from injury. And obviously, like I said earlier, AJ McCarron is a veteran QB. But, even I'm sure if you sat Tom Brady for 5 weeks in his prime, he'd be a little rusty to begin with, and then he'd get back into it. But
absolutely. I mean, like we talked about with the Birmingham game, it's kind of a tune-up game. Essentially, at the end of the day, St. Louis is in the playoffs. We know they're going, so is San Antonio. So it's just going to end up being a complete rematch next week. So going to be interesting to see how that one shakes out as well. But in this game, the secondary and linebackers for San Antonio had 8 pass breakups and interception, and they also produced 3 sacks. So obviously a pretty solid day for them on today, and kind of surprising to see how much success they really had against this wide receiver group, because honestly, it's one of the better ones in the league, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, they did a really good job today, especially swarming to the ball. Everywhere you'd see just a bunch of the same colored jerseys all on the ball carrier, and it was fun to watch.
Absolutely would agree. So let's kind of move on. Let's talk about some mids, or I guess end of the year award candidates. So when you look across the league right now and you think about the MVP award, who sticks out to you? I mean, if you had to pick 3 guys, and who's your probably top final candidate that's going to end up with the award?
Man, three guys, probably Adrian Martinez, and Adrian Martinez. But besides that, probably Adrian Martinez. There's really nobody else right now. If this was week 6, I would have said Adrian Martinez and AJ McCarron. But because he was out for a few weeks, he didn't keep up stats-wise. And even if he did perform his best in every week he played, which he hasn't, then I'd still pick Adrian Martinez over AJ McCarron because of just the overall body of work. And he's on the best team in the league right now. So,
how much does winning as a team play into the MVP award for you when it's going to a quarterback?
It's essential to factor in winning, because that's what you need as a quarterback ultimately to do. It doesn't matter if you're handing the ball off every play or if you're throwing every down. Teams win when they have a good quarterback.
That's definitely fair to a certain extent. Man, I just lost my train of thought. You're an Arlington fan. Is there any case to be made for Luis Perez to be in that running?
I think there's a case for Offensive Player of the Year. Maybe not MVP, though. He performed very well individually, very good stats. If he's on a different team, he'd definitely be in the playoffs, I think. But just a rough season for him. For not him, but his team.
Yeah, hard to say he had a rough season.
Yeah, hard to say he had a bad season.
15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, passing yards leader. I believe he's got one of the highest completion rates in the entire league, which no surprise. He's obviously a very accurate passer. That's never really been a question for him. Intelligent guy who typically makes the right decision more often than not as well. So let's talk about Offensive Player of the Year. You said Luis Perez is a candidate for you. When you look across the league and other positions, who else could kind of be in that conversation?
I think Lovett, San Antonio, or Hakeem Butler are a couple of really good options as well. Lovett mainly because he's the best running back, I believe, in the league. And Hakeem Butler has been a dominant force for the Battlehawks all season as well.
What would you say if I made an argument about Sal Cannella? I know that's kind of a
I'd
stretch.
say it would be fair because he is leading in touchdowns right now.
That's exactly the case I would make. He's got the most touchdowns in the league currently. That could actually go up tomorrow. We'll have to see. But he's also basically the top receiver for the Arlington Renegades. It's not as if, there's another wideout on the team that quite does what he does, and he's kind of a hybrid guy. He's not really a tight end as much as he is kind of a large wide receiver.
I'd say that he and Hakeem Butler are both hybrid guys, but Sal Cannella is more like a tight end than he is a receiver, and Hakeem Butler is more like a right wide receiver than he's a tight end.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. That's exactly how I would put it, at that point. So let's kind of talk about Defensive Player of the Year, which I think gets really interesting because I don't think there's too many people who have really stuck out from the pack on defense. I have my thoughts, but who would you put when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year?
If it's not Breland Speaks, I'm gonna riot, I think.
That's exactly where I was going with it as well. I mean, I don't think any other players had as big of an impact on the game defensively as Breland Speaks has this year. And quite honestly, you could probably have made a better case for him last year as well. So hopefully he gets it. As much as I would love to say that Joe Powell should be considered, given that he's a former, Carolina Cobra.
He's a favorite of mine, man. I love that guy.
I agree. I don't quite understand why he wasn't on the Renegades roster to start the season, but obviously it would be too difficult to even make the case. But the guy's only played in 4 games and he's got 2 interceptions. So obviously he's 2 interceptions and a couple pass breakups as well. Just to be clear, sorry. It's a situation where that guy came off essentially the bench or the street and came in and reminded everybody why he should have been there in the first place and how big of a part he was of the Renegades championship run last year. Exactly. Not only is he such a great player on defense, he's also a special teams maven as well. So speaking of which, so Breland Speaks Defensive Player of the Year. We're thinking either Luis Perez, Adrian Martinez, Hakeem Butler, Offensive Player of the Year. Adrian Martinez is probably MVP. What about Special Teams Player of the Year? Does it go to a return man?
I think it kind of has to because I'm not sure. The kicking started off very well, and then later in the year, it's kind of gone a little bit worse. But I'd give it to Darius Shepard.
Okay. Why would you say Darius Shepard in particular?
I feel like every time I watch him, he's making some kind of play off of a punt or a kickoff, and he's making guys miss where he shouldn't be making guys miss, and he's really creating extra yards for the Battlehawks. So
that's definitely fair. What about your guy, Juwan Manigo or Manigo?
Juwan Manigo would have to be second for me because as much as I love him, because I've worked with him a lot, and I'm always supportive of him. He hasn't been as good as Shepard, but he's been very good for the Renegades. It's just that, he's on a losing team. He kind of gets buried under a lot of the more winning teams that you see on TV and social media more often.
I could see that. And then my final option, and this is probably my favorite to win the award personally. What about Chris Rowland? Over 1,000 total return yards this season, league leader in kick return yards. What about Rowland? What do you think about him?
Chris Rowland, he's leading the league in all-purpose yards too, which is insane. And I don't. This is 100% my opinion, by the way. Like, take it with a grain of salt, please. But I've watched most games, and it feels like a lot of the stuff he's done has looked really easy, and that can be two ways. That can be because of two things: he makes it look easy, or it is really easy. Like he's getting benefited from a really good kickoff coverage, kickoff block team, that kind of thing. I've just seen it's been harder for Darius Shepard to make these kind of plays, and I've been more impressed with him as a player.
That's fair for sure. And honestly, he might have a case for MVP. You know, if you look back, you know, Cavante Turpin won MVP in year one of the USFL because of what he did all-purpose yards. When you look at what Roland's done, I mean, he's got almost 1,000 yards in the kick return game, which, you know, we could see him top that number. In fact, if he doesn't top 1,000 yards tomorrow, I would be shocked. He's at 950 now. 235 yards receiving, 29 rushing yards, 127 yards punt return, a total of over 1,300 yards, and he still has a game to play.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
That's impressive. That's got to get you.
Don't know if it's MVP worth
in the eyes on the eyes of NFL scouts, I believe, as a special teams guy.
I hope so. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but I feel like his impact alone in the kick return game should be very valuable, especially considering we all know the XFL rule has been adopted by the NFL. He played with the Defenders or the Stars previously, but he's got a little bit of experience, you know, with that kicking rule in the past. So, I mean, it would be a guy that maybe would make some sense there, which could be interesting. But
certainly,
like I said, he's getting up there in age. I don't know how many teams are looking for a 27, 28-year-old return guy.
It would have to be a very, very needy team, special teams wise.
That's true. I can't even think of anybody off the top of my head that would really be a fit for him right off the top of my head. But I'm sure if I really dug into it, some teams would start to make sense.
Certainly.
I would like to say Atlanta, but he's already been there.
Whatever team had the least amount of kickoff return yards last year, I mean, I would definitely take a waiver on him.
It's worth the flyer. I mean, if you're really looking for that explosiveness in the return game, he definitely can bring it.
No, certainly.
So could Justin Hall. I mean, I know just random name out there, but I'm a big fan of him. Should do a highlight video on him.
Oh yeah. Hey, if Bryce Perkins played more, I'd make one on him because he's electric.
He's fun to watch.
He really is. I hope he starts somewhere next year.
That's another subject we should have touched on during that game. But I'm shocked to see him still splitting time. You know, maybe they're saving him for the playoffs, but why not just give him the call, you know, and let him start a game?
I mean, the game they played was ultimately meaningless. So I thought about it as well. If I'm the coach, I go, okay, these are our two guys we're to sign between. Give them each a half. Whoever does better starts the playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would have done. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It seems like they've got something against him starting so far, but hopefully he gets that opportunity next week. We'll see. You know, but moving on to tomorrow's games, we've got Arlington Renegades versus DC Defenders in Audi Field at 12 p.m. Eastern. Another early game. I've mentioned it before. I love those early games personally. Houston Roughnecks versus Memphis Showboats at Memphis at 7 p.m. Eastern. So pretty big gap between games there tomorrow. If you're curious what the betting odds are, give me just a moment. It looks like Arlington is plus 1.5 over DC Defenders. Houston Roughnecks are the favorites in their game, negative 2.5 per our sponsored BetUS. Speaking of which, let's
sponsored. Oh yeah.
Get in the game at BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. Over 50 sports, live betting, online casino, horse racing, esports, and more. Start now and enjoy easy deposits, fastest payouts, and the biggest bonuses. And for over 25 years, BetUS is a name you can trust. Mention TV 150 now and get up to 150% in bonuses. BetUS, we've got your game. Call or visit BetUS.com now to join.
We actually don't normally shout that out on this channel, or this show, but why not, right? Different scenario. But there is actually one other video I need to play real quick because this show can now be seen on Roku via the Huddle Sports Network.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
All right, that ad is a little long. I apologize for that. But shout out to the Huddle Sports Network for streaming this show on their Roku channel. We're very excited to be able to be viewed on Roku, Amazon Fire, and I'm blanking the other channel currently, but I was more concerned about Roku anyway, to be honest. So here are the betting odds. We got an over-under in the early game of 46.5 points. So I'm curious, when you look at the Arlington, D.C. Defenders game, given that Arlington's away, do you think this is an accurate point spread?
No. This is okay. As big as a Renegades fan I am, I think that DC is going to win by a fair margin. Although Luis Perez should have a really good game because he always does.
I firmly believe the same thing. You know, I'm typically a believer that if you have a home team, you should at least have a 3-point favorite.
Yes.
You know, unless it's a dramatically exaggerated gap in talent. You know, I mean, if you're talking about like a 1-6 team and a 10-1 team or whatever, you know, something like that, or a 1-9 team.
There's a couple of bad teams.
Makes sense. But yeah, crazy. Kind of weird to see that personally, but hey, you know, whatever. I'm not an expert when it comes to the betting side. Watch it be like exactly 2 points tomorrow or something like that, especially after today's games.
You should listen to us, not the experts, for sure.
At least sometimes. Don't take my betting advice. Take it with a grain of salt, like I said. But I would definitely bet the under on this game. What do you think about that?
I'm feeling the same way. I do think it'll be a 10-point victory for DC, though.
Okay. Do you have a score prediction right offhand? And I was not prepared to write this down. Give me just a sec. Actually, just go for it. I got you.
I'm going 25-15.
Okay, so 40 points. Definitely firmly in the under category. I like that score. I think I'm going to go like DC 22-18. Ironically, 40 points as well. Expect them to win. Like I said, I don't necessarily think either one of these teams are going to blow the other away. But at the same time, I just don't see Arlington pulling out the victory in this week. I would love to see, you know, Luis Perez go off and have a good game. And, you know, assuming this could potentially be one of his last games, you know, I would like to see him have some success. We've all watched him and been a fan of him as he's kind of worked his way through all these different leagues. So
don't even say that, man. Don't even say that. Not Luis. I can't let him go.
If I'm being completely honest, the only reason I even bring it up is because recently there was an article on SportsIllustrated.com written by Mike Mitchell. You know, he kind of speculated that we could be looking at the swan song for Jordan Teamu. We could be looking at the swan song for Luis Perez, Bob Stoops, a lot of these guys that we've watched in two different iterations of the XFL at this point. So, you know, it could be a big transition year heading into 2025 for the UFL. And, you know, it could mean losing a lot of these kind of established spring football stars, although I firmly hope it does not. I would like to watch Jordan Ta'amu play his entire career in the UFL if he can, and someday retire at like 30 years old with 10,000 some passing yards over his UFL career. I think that'd be really awesome to see a league last that long and develop into a place where these players can build a career and build a brand around themselves. I know there's still not necessarily concerns, but questions about the future of the league and if it can make it into year 4, year 5, year 6, and ultimately go the distance. But we all hope it does, right?
In its current state, I believe it will. But I think that if you're going to maintain players like these over the long period of time, like Luis Perez and Jordan Ta'amu, where they make careers out of this league, you have to start paying them more. And once you start paying them more, that's when the league can become volatile.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I could also see ways that you could build in extra pay for players based on, years of service.
Yeah.
Basically,
or heavily incentive-based contracts, that too.
Yeah, that too. That I'm all about incentives. Incentives breed a situation where those players are hungry. They're going to be fighting for every last statistic that they get, and sometimes they'll breed some situations where you're going to see some massive blowouts, or you're going to see teams that are fighting every last inch of what they've got till the end of the game because they want those extra incentives, if nothing else.
Certainly.
I think that's definitely a good way to keep games competitive in the long run. But looking at the Houston Roughnecks and Memphis Showboats game tomorrow, if you had to guess in this one, how do you see this one turning out?
Does anyone really care about this game? If someone forces me to watch it, I might watch it. No, I'm kidding. But I believe that Houston's going to get it done. Memphis just looks like a mess, and I don't see them coming close this game. As not great as these two teams are, I think that Houston is much less not great than Memphis is.
Okay, fair enough. So you're saying that the Houston being a favorite in Memphis is probably fairly accurate.
Yes, it is accurate.
Gotcha. I would agree.
Because
Memphis,
there's not even fans there anyway. It's not like it's really they could be playing on Mars. It's
to a certain extent, you're not wrong. I mean, man, we could sit here and harp on the attendance in the USFL markets all day long.
It's been horrible.
But we're here for a good time, not a long time, to steal a phrase from Cool McCain. Make sure you check out his shows, Eagles Elite, every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Dude's hilarious. I promise you will not be disappointed, and you will definitely be entertained the entire time you tune in. Shameless plug there. So moving on to your prediction for the Saturday USFL Conference Championship game for next week. I unfortunately do not have the betting odds for that one available currently. Obviously it's a rematch of exactly the game we saw today, Birmingham versus Michigan in Birmingham. It's a little bit later in the day. It kicks off 3 p.m. Eastern. This one's on ABC, not ESPN. You can also listen to the radio broadcast on ESPN Extra on Sirius XM. So let's go ahead and get into this. I mean, Birmingham gets a chance to defend their title once again at home in Birmingham where they're comfortable. Is there any way in hell we see Michigan win this game next week?
Yes, I'm picking them. I think Michigan will win.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm curious, why do you think Michigan?
Well, mainly because I really don't like Birmingham. That's the main reason. But also because I think that Birmingham has some real issues when it comes to passing the ball, especially against good teams. And we've seen that throughout the course of the year. And I think that if Michigan can do what they did today, they have a chance. And now when they have a chance, I'm going to pick them because I want them to win.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Do you have a score prediction on this one?
Man. Let's go 36-35 Michigan on a Jake
36.
Bates winning field goal.
Oh, okay. I like it. I like
There
it.
you go.
36,
Redemption.
35.
Redemption.
Exactly. 1 point victory and a Jake Bates redemption field goal. I like that. I like that a lot. It would be fitting, although I am going the exact opposite way. I do not think there is any chance in hell Michigan wins this game. I'm sorry. The Stallions will be in the UFL championship as much as part of me wants to see somebody else different in there. If you want to be the best, you beat the best. And so far, there's only one team that's beat Birmingham this season, and it hasn't been Michigan. So I have no faith that they're going to do it next week. I don't see it. I don't see Birmingham losing in their house when the championship game's on the line, especially when they know they have a chance to not only, cement their legacy as players, but, as a coach, I'm sure that means a lot to Skip Holtz, getting that third straight championship. That stuff matters to these players. That's why they're there. So I personally think the Stallions are going to take this victory. I think it's going to be a close game, but I still think it's going to be a decisive victory by the Stallions. I don't necessarily see a situation where they're going to run away with it, but I don't feel like it's going to be out of reach for Michigan, but I think Stallions will ultimately stay ahead most of the game. I think they're going to take an early lead and just coast to a victory, basically. I'm saying I think 71 points is a lot. So I don't know I could go that high. Let's go 26-18 Birmingham in the championship, or the USFL championship game is my prediction. It'll be interesting to see who wins tomorrow, and as well as the XFL championship, to see who the Stallions will be facing. But we will definitely be back next Saturday at the same time, or 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central. If you're watching us from the Mountain Time, 7:30 p.m. To discuss the rest of those games next week, as well as the tomorrow games. We'll break those down as well. Any final thoughts for us, Bryce? I know you're probably getting a little tired. It's later on your side of the world than mine.
Mainly just that I'll be gloating next week whenever my score prediction is perfect. So that's all I'm thinking about right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll check right back here next week to make sure that Bryce is actually gloating, or if we see the Stallions win. At some point, I feel like spring football fans will probably get a little annoyed with seeing the Stallions in the championship game every year, kind of similar to how everybody loved to hate the Patriots at one point. You know what I mean?
On one hand,
getting to that point.
On one hand, it creates like a name brand of the league. Like, oh yeah, the Stallions are good, because they always keep them winning. But on the other, it's like, damn, the Stallions won again. Oh, come on.
To a certain extent. I wonder how much that stuff affects casual fans, though. You know what I mean? I don't think they would look at it like, oh, they won a third championship in a bad manner. I think they're more like, oh, okay, maybe we should kind of look into this league a little bit, or this team in particular. But who knows? No final thoughts from me. I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the like button, comment, subscribe. As always, make sure you're subscribing to both channels, Pylon Productions and Shady Sports Network. We were going to be doing a lot of work together in the future, as well as currently. You can catch Bryce every Tuesday night on Summer Showcase about the ELF, the European League. So how's that show going for you? Are you enjoying that one so far?
I'm really enjoying it. Yeah. It's nice because I really want, after college, I want to go into media of some sort. And it's kind of like a practice, I guess. Not to say like it's not important. It is important. But like I get to practice those skills of like researching stats in games and saying how I feel about them and making sure they're coherent thoughts and I'm not looking like an idiot online,
No, I like it. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And definitely is practice. This is not the pros. This is semi-pros, just so we're clear. I'm not paying Bryce to be here. I'm not paid to be here. We're just talking because we love the sport. So definitely make sure that you support both channels, and we can get to the point where we're paid. And
There you
guys don't even have to pay us. It's great. It's a win-win for everybody. But with that note, I'm going to play one last commercial for you guys. Our sponsor, D's Place, and catch them if you need any photography or videography work.
Follow your passion first. First. It's the most fun thing in the world. You get up in the morning excited about what you're doing. And you got to be really honest with yourself about it.